And I just want to identify the hormones. You can find there's a chart from the anterior lobe and just a brief description maybe of what these hormones do. So I'll get rid of this. We know what ADH and oxytocin are involved in. And if you look at the chart on page 351, table 11.3, you'll see that first hormone that's mentioned there is growth hormone. It used to be called HGH, human growth hormone. So what this does is it stimulates an increase in the size and division rate of body cells. Okay. Cell division. Very
Is this the
active.
thing that some athletes will take to build muscle mass?
Yes, or an analog of that, of human growth hormone. Yeah, it's a steroid that's pretty popular in the gyms around the United States. You got to be careful when you use that stuff because it's illegal for one thing without a prescription, and you don't know where you're getting it from. There's a lot of, there's places in Canada that do it, there's places in Mexico that do it, so when you buy these things, you don't know how pure they are and who made them, so I wouldn't trust them. I remember when I was in high school, and this was back in the late 60s, they didn't really push it on us, but they made it available for us. Because all they were worried about, of course, is winning the ball game. But these things are not benign. Used over a long period of time, they can have bad effects on your liver and cause testicular atrophy because, particularly the analogs of testosterone will do that. But anyway, not a good thing to use. All right, growth hormone. And if you look, the source of control, there is a growth hormone releasing and inhibiting hormone. So when you look at these hormones, I'm just going to kind of go through their main mechanism, what they do, but also note, just take a quick look at the source of control of these hormones and what causes them to be released, okay? And a lot of these come from these releasing and or inhibiting factors from the hypothalamus, all right? So for the GH, growth hormone, releasing hormone, so you call that GHRH, and growth hormone inhibiting hormone to suppress the release of that, okay? And so you will get some atrophy or reduction in cell size from the cells in the hypothalamus that produce these inhibiting and releasing factors if you're taking exogenous, growth hormone, because you're flooding your system, and in sort of that negative feedback way, they say, well, there's plenty of this stuff in there and we don't need to produce it. Okay? All right. Prolactin is another. Let me just write growth hormone. This one it's sort of easy to remember if you understand what lactation is, in the female. Stimulates milk production. And the source of control for that is prolactin release inhibiting hormone, and it's pretty much the same as the prolactin release inhibiting hormone and prolactin release stimulating hormone. And again, these from the hypothalamus all right. And you'll get a release of this hormone under the influence of other hormones, during pregnancy. All right, important one here, thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH. All right, and it controls the secretion of controls the release or secretion of thyroid hormones like T3, T4. Okay, and these are metabolic regulators, all right? And you get this TRH from the hypothalamus, this thyrotropin releasing hormone. And we'll see this is a common theme from these inhibiting and releasing hormones from the hypothalamus. All right. And just take a look. T3, they call it that because it's triiodothyronine. Tri meaning three, it's got 3 iodine molecules or 3 iodine atoms in the molecule. T4 tetraiodothyronine, it's got 4. And so this is why, you know, iodine is important in your diet. This is why in days of yore, all the salt that was sold in the United States was iodized, because particularly in away from the coast, seafood, shellfish is a good source of iodine. Many people had iodine deficiencies. And if you've ever seen, you ever seen a goiter, which is a huge enlargement of the thyroid gland, results from a thyroid or an iodine deficiency. So we iodize the salt, everybody uses salt, no more problem with iodine deficiency. Okay, TSH. Now this other one, ACTH. They're all important, but this ACTH, adreno, because it stimulates the adrenal gland, corticotropic hormone. And this will stimulate the release of hormones from the adrenal cortex, okay? Those being cortisol, okay, now there are 3 different areas in the, you have an example of these hormones is like cortisol, but you have 3 different areas, and if my memory serves, in the adrenal cortex you have the well, let's look. I don't remember. There's 3 different zones, and let's see if they break it down here for you, which I don't know if they will. Yes, they do. The zona glomerulosa, the zona fasciculata, and we'll see the hormones from there. The glomerulosa, the fasciculata, and the zona reticularis. And I have to admit, I gotta look and see which comes from where. Cells in the outer zone, the adrenal cortex, the zona glomerulosa, synthesize an important hormone called aldosterone. and I put a little aldosterone. I put a little underline or asterisk by that one. And this is what they refer to as a mineral corticoid. Right, 'cause this helps to control or regulate salt content in the body, okay? So that's an important one from the glomerulosa. It helps to regulate salt content, or salt, yeah. All right, in the zone fasciculata, I think is where the glucocorticoids come from. That's the middle zone, yeah. So that is where cortisol, and cortisol is a glucocorticoid. All right, and you can look through that. And, this has an effect on protein and fat metabolism. Okay. All right, and these are just some generalized effects of these things, and then the zona reticularis secretes these hormones called the sex hormones. Okay, we have estrogen and testosterone. And believe it or not, we do have males, we do have a low level of estrogen circulating in our blood produced by our adrenal cortex. The exact function of that, they are unsure of at this point because the levels are so low, generally considered clinically insignificant. But in females, they have a little bit higher levels normally of testosterone, and that's an important function in the females, and that's to stimulate the sex drive, the desire to reproduce. Without that, species goes extinct, right? So that has an important function in the female. All right, so again, ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone. We've got the different ones. The mineralocorticoids come from the outer layer of the zona glomerulosa. The glucocorticoids, cortisol, corticosterone, come from the zona fasciculata, and then the sex hormones come from the inner layer of the adrenal cortex. Now, also while we're on the adrenal gland, because there's the adrenal medulla, and that's there's the cortex and medulla is sort of a general theme about organization. Like our brain, the outer layer of our brain is the cerebral cortex, and then the inner layer, like the medulla. So the adrenal medulla releases two important hormones. And they are epinephrine, adrenaline, and norepinephrine. Okay, and these are released during the sympathetic stimulation. Okay, if you look at, let's see. All right, said the sex hormones. I want to look at the adrenal medulla. Yeah, the epinephrine and norepinephrine. Similar structure. In fact, the norepinephrine is the precursor to the production of epinephrine, but adrenaline, and the effects that the adrenaline has on the body. Prepare the body for stress, fight or flight, if you will. Okay? All right. Try to make quick and dirty here. adrenal medulla, adrenal cortex. All right, the pancreas, we sort of made quick reference to that, but we'll look at the pancreas. Oh, now let's finish the hormones first, and then we'll kind of take a look at that. All right, follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH. And again, these are from the anterior pituitary.
And that would be on
351.
351, okay.
Yeah.
Go back to the chart.
Yeah, going back to the chart. But I want to just kind of mention them, I guess, because...
Is this chart important?
Yes, that chart is important. Because it gives you a general overview, and that's important. Well, you know, a couple of things...
What's the assignment for Saturday this week?
You mean the discussion thing?
Yeah, it's not the chart?
It's related to it, I believe.
Okay.
Couple of things important here that we just mentioned. Distinguish between mineral corticoids and glucocorticoids, okay? All right, FSH, or follicle stimulating hormone.
Mineral, and what's the second one?
Gluco.
Gluco, got it.
Corticoids, the one that fat and protein metabolism. Okay, FSH. I'd make note of this too because it has different effects in the females. FSH, development of the female ova, the egg, okay? Responsible for development of the egg-containing follicles in the ovaries, okay? Now, as you might expect, in the males, FSH, well, it stimulates the egg development in the female, so in the male, sperm development. Okay. The source of control for the FSH, the GHRH, or gonadotropin releasing hormone from the hypothalamus. And most of these sources of control, if you go down there, you can see they're from the hypothalamus. Okay, you have these, and those are called, by the way, that's a good, they're called, you'll see that each one of them has this thing called a tropic attached to it, all right, from the hypothalamus. Okay, and they can be stimulating or inhibiting, all right. Gonadotropin releasing hormone, GRH. This is the source of control for this one. Again, from the hypothalamus. Gonadotropin releasing hormone. All right, and we know what it does. Following the FSH. LH, on the other hand, or luteinizing hormone. Again, two different effects in the male and the female. Luteinizing hormone, secretion of sex hormones, and plays a release in ovulation, stimulating ovulation, helping to stimulate ovulation, the release of the egg. Okay, and also the female sex hormones, release of female sex hormones, and the same in the male. Stimulates the release of testosterone, sex hormone. Okay. Follicle stimulating luteinizing hormone. Almost done. Oh, we are done with the anterior lobe. And again, the luteinizing hormone, or the control for that, gonadotropin releasing hormones, okay, from the hypothalamus. Keep this idea here, just in your head, that those hormones from the anterior pituitary, all right, they're controlled by these tropic hormones, either inhibiting or releasing. Okay. And we did mention the two from the posterior lobe, the ADH and the oxytocin. All right, now we're looking, you have two different types of cells in the thyroid gland.
So where are we moving to?
We're gonna move, we're on the, just going right through it,
Okay.
still on 351.
All right.
We'll look at now the thyroid gland. Okay, this is the target for that thyroid stimulating hormone that we and I want to bring that up because I remember seeing something about that. You have these cell types. They're called follicular cells. And you can see a diagram of them there. And these are the hormones that release, these are the cells that release T3 and T4. Thyroid, okay. There is if you know anybody who is hypothyroid, they oftentimes have to take a synthetic thyroid hormone. One of the more popular ones out there is called Synthroid. If you've ever known anybody like that, they probably take that. It's a synthetic T3, T4 hormone. Okay. All right, and again, they're called T3 and T4. They have similar action. The T3 has 3 iodine moieties on it, and the T4 has 4 iodine. Okay, now, there's another type of cell called an extra follicular cell in the thyroid gland, and it produces a hormone called calcitonin. All right, and what this hormone does is it stimulates, if you look at calcitonin, blah, 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 when the calcium levels in the blood, when you have an increased serum calcium, okay, and I believe the normal level is somewhere around 8 to 10 milligrams per deciliter, and if it goes above that, and calcitonin is released, and it will stimulate a type of bone cell called an osteoblast. Okay, so we got too much calcium in our blood, all right? It'll stimulate a bone cell called an osteo, by what that prefix means, bone, blast. And what these cells will do is they'll take that calcium out of the blood and deposit it in bone matrix. So your bones will get, it'll help.
That was one of the test questions last on the test.
Oh, it was?
Osteoblast, yeah.
Yeah.
Cellular membrane or something like that.
All right, and also it'll stimulate release of calcium from the kidneys. Or secretion, I should say, not release. Secretion of calcium from the kidneys. It's all in an effort to reduce serum calcium and bring it back down to its homeostatic level. All right. Now there is a hormone that works in opposition to this, if you will, and it's from the parathyroid gland. And these are between, I think, 4 P-shaped parathyroid glands. All right, and they're on the posterior surface of the thyroid. If you look here, you can see on the back side of the thyroid, you have these 4 little P-shaped glands there. All right, what we need to remember about them is that when you have a decreased serum calcium. All right, in other words, your calcium level has fallen below this 8 milligrams per deciliter. They'll release a hormone called PTH, parathyroid hormone. All right, and what these will do is they'll, among other things, but one of the primary things they do is they'll stimulate a bone cell called osteoclast. And what these osteoclast cells do is they actually break down bone matrix to reduce bone density and release calcium ions into the blood. Okay, so they break down the osteoclasts. Build up bone, while the osteoclasts break down bone. And parathyroid hormone also works to stimulate absorption of calcium from your gut. Okay, all in an effort to bring your calcium level back to normal. So these two are a pair that you're going to want to remember, calcitonin and PTH. Remember, the calcitonin goes into play when our serum calcium is too high. So when it's too high, we got to do something to get the calcium out of the blood, build up bone, and stimulate secretion from the kidneys. When calcium level's too low, we want to break down bone to release calcium into the blood and promote absorption of calcium from the gut, from whatever we eat. All right, quickly moving, see if there's any others. We talked about the adrenal gland and the two that come from there. Take a look at the effects here, table 11.5 on page 355. Just take a quick look, because you already know pretty much what these are. Mm-hmm. The effects of epinephrine and norepinephrine on the body. You know, like it increases heart rate, increases the force of contraction. Now, epinephrine will have a different effect than norepinephrine on blood vessels. One, the epinephrine causes vasodilation, particularly to the skeletal muscles. In a stressful situation, you want more blood going there. Norepinephrine, vasoconstriction to the skin and viscera, for the same reason. You need more blood going to the muscles than you do going to your viscera, your digestive organs, if you will. If you're in a fight, you don't want to stop and having to be digesting a meal. Okay. We looked at the adrenal sex hormones. All right, one thing about the pancreas I want to mention quickly. Two things about the pancreas. We get two hormones from the pancreas. One we've already mentioned, insulin. They come from the beta cells. All right, so we have two cell types. You have beta cells. They release insulin. And you know that insulin works to lower blood sugar. Lower blood sugar. And then we have this other one called glucagon. And this is from the alpha cells. Release glucagon. And this is a substance that works on, helps to break down glycogen, which is a what we call animal starch. We store this stuff in our liver and in our muscle cells as a source of energy. Okay, it breaks it down into individual glucose molecules to bring the blood sugar back up. Okay, and that is to raise blood sugar. All right. So they work sort of opposite of each other. Insulin to lower blood sugar, and again, normal blood sugar, depending upon what lab, 7 to 110 milligrams per deciliter. Okay. And just, these collectively, these cells are referred to as the islet cells or islets of Langerhans. Named after the guy that characterized them, I guess. All right, Langerhans. All right. We know what insulin does. Controlled by negative feedback. Another one, the pineal gland in the brain. These are, I like that one because my wife told you she has a tumor on her acoustic nerve. She also has one on her pineal gland. And this releases a substance called melatonin, which you can buy this, down to GNC and get it. It helps to regulate what's called the circadian rhythm, your sleep-wake cycles. Okay, and the synthesis of this, is partially controlled by the amount of light that comes in through your eyes throughout the day. And when the more light that comes through, sunlight, ultraviolet radiation, the less melatonin you produce. And then as the day goes on, wanes down, the amount of light goes down, then this synthesis goes up, and then we get stimulated to sleep. Okay, and this is kind of what gets goofed up in jet lag. Because you're sitting in a pressurized cabin with artificial light, and it messes up a normal rhythm that you might have, particularly if you fly from one continent to another. When I flew from Dulles to London, it took me 2 days to get it back together. I decided that I was gonna, on the way back, try not to run into that problem and spend most of my time sleeping. So I had to have a few drinks to help that happen. So, okay. Thymus gland, real quick. More active in adolescence or youth and adolescence. Secretes a hormone called thymosin. And has to do with the maturation of white blood cells. And again, mostly active in youth, newborn and youth. And then as we get older, the thymus kind of atrophies and